Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to the brand new Porsche Cayenne Coupé. In 2002 is when the Porsche Cayenne first hit the markets, and since then there have been an awful lot of changes. Now in its third generation, Porsche have finally decided it's time for a coupe version. Well, that's quite a radical departure in styling terms, but for lovers of the front of this car, you'll be delighted to hear that almost nothing has changed when it comes to the coupe. The styling is still very distinctively Porsche and very distinctively Cayenne. Bold, aggressive, stylish, sporty, lovely at the front. But what's going on when we come around to the side and we start seeing some of those coupe stylings? Let's take a closer look. At first glance, you can immediately pick up the 911 design cues that have gone into the creation of this coupe. We have such an aggressive sweep now on the roofline that the whole aesthetic of the car has completely changed from the standard Cayenne. If I walk into shot a little bit, then we can see the first most noticeable place in which that has changed. This A-pillar is lowered, as has the window line, by 20 millimeters. That's approximately that much, and it really brings the design straight through into this lovely curve. Now, before we go further back on the car, I want to point out a couple of things here. Standardly, this car is going to come with 20-inch wheels. Here we have a special lightweight pack, so these are 22 inches. In styling terms, I think you'd have to agree they make a very bold statement. The other thing that's different stylistically about this lightweight pack is the contrasting wheel trim here. Now, if you just go with the standard model, you'll get matching body color paint. And on the subject of paint, I think it's well worth pointing this out. This is lava orange, and fans of the 911 will already know and love this color, and I think it suits this design fantastically. When you look at this contrasting wheel arch, which only serves to accentuate these massive wheels, it also narrows your visual aesthetic of the color from the side, which really has you looking at it thinking, that looks very familiar to the 911. As you come further back and you look at this swooping roofline that cuts right through into the back, there are a couple of other really important changes that have happened here. These shoulders are now broader. This has been redesigned at the rear to accommodate lower rear seats. Now, we all know with coupe rooflines, the standard problem is they're great until you have to sit in the back. Well, Porsche have thought of that, so these seats are now 30 millimeters lower. That's about that much if you're unfamiliar with metric, and it makes a huge difference to the way that the rear works. This is now 18 millimeters wider in the shoulders. That's a significant difference. And as the top tapers through into the back and the side follows round, you can see just what a difference that makes to the aesthetic of the car. I'm going to stand back so you can drink it in one more time before we go around and take a look at the rear. Round at the back again, you can see just how different this coupe styling is. We have a really nicely matched top spoiler, but slightly lower down. We have an adaptive spoiler that comes up by 135 millimeters when you're going at speeds over 90 kilometers per hour. We're going to take a closer look at that in action a little bit later on. But for now, you can see from the rear just quite what a difference those 18 millimeters make to the width of these shoulders. It really gives it a big visual presence. Also slightly different, you have a look down, you can now see that the number plate has been integrated into the lower part of the bumper, and that really makes the car sit very low aesthetically on the road. Nice carbon effect rear air diffusers, and look at these tailpipes. Solid, no fakery at all, really nicely finished. If you spend any time hanging out on Porsche forums, which probably tells you more about me than it does about the car, you'll know that the rear spoiler of Porsches causes more argument than almost anything else. So it took Porsche a long time before they decided how best to integrate this into the design. Let's take a look and see what's powering this thing. Well, I can tell you that from launch, you're going to have the option of two different engines. Here you can see the big beast. This is a 4-litre V8 twin turbo producing 550 horsepower and 770 newton meters of torque. Now that is going to give you a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour speed of 3.9 seconds, a top speed of 286. And I think you'll agree that that is more than fast enough. But if you'd rather save a little bit, then you can get the 6-cylinder turbo 3-litre standard, and that is 340 horsepower, 450 newton meters of torque, and a 0 to 100 time of 6 seconds. However, if you go with the sports lightweight package, then you can reduce that down to 5.9. But come on, it's all about the drive, right? So if you're going to go for it, you need to go for it. Another traditional problem that you always have with coupe designs is the amount of available space in the rear. If we have a look in here, the layout is actually really impressive for a coupe SUV. If I just put my arm in right to the back, you can... Oh, the car's brake's not actually on. You can get a really good sense of how much room there is back here. Now, you actually get this rear compartment in two different sizes depending on the spec. It's either 600 or 625 litres of load space, depending if you go with the standard or the turbo. Why the difference? Well, that all comes down to the Bose sound system that is fitted in the rear of the turbos. You can see it's eating up just a little bit of room in the storage well, but nothing too crazy. Obviously, it doesn't impact on the available space up here. I think that there's a huge amount of room, but if you need more, if you drop down those rear seats to allow you the full reach right through to the back, you're talking about over 1,500 litres of load space. And I think that that should prove more than enough for anyone, especially if you're making a change up from a Porsche 911. Key is a very standard Porsche affair, but it's very popular and it's really nice in the hand, so I don't see any reason why that's a problem. As soon as you open the car, you'll see that there is an awful lot here that looks very familiar. That's because a lot of the interior design has been lifted directly from the Cayenne. Now, that could only make sense. Now in its third generation, the design just keeps getting better and better, and this works very nicely. Indeed, that said, there are some very specific personal touches right from the get-go as you have a look in here. Now we have the lighter weight sports package on this car, which is why you can see we've got carbon detailing elements here, and if Jonas can just swing round to the door, you can see there's also a very particular Cayenne turbo lit strip on the entrance into the car. So everything here clean, uncluttered, very functional, very sporty, very stylish, a nice feeling to the finish of materials. We do have completely new seats, and Jonas is just going to take a quick swing round so we can show you those. These have a cloth interior that may look very familiar to you if you are familiar with the 911. They have a leather exterior and a leather top. They are available in different finishes, but this is the one that is particularly specific to this car. Because we have the sports lightweight package, we also have an awful lot of Alcantara here, but we will show you a lot more of that as we actually get into the car. As far as the interior display is concerned, well, if you're familiar with the modern Porsche layout, this is not going to come as a surprise to you. Everything is very nicely finished, and I'm happy to say that standard for these cars is the Sports Chrono Pack. So that means you have the clock here and also the all-important mode selector down here. So in terms of Porsche evolution, clearly the digital dashboard takes a little bit of adjusting to, but I found it in use to be extremely good here. This still for me requires a little bit of refinement. It's quite hard finding the features that you're actually looking for while you're driving. But that said, you can tell aesthetically as you look further back along the cockpit that the idea really has been a minimalistic design feature. If I turn the car off again, you can see quite how much of that comes to life only when it's switched on. So the idea of the aesthetic is very clean and uncluttered. Lots of those controls are set into here. Now let's take a look in the rear to see what's happening back here. Well, the first thing to note is these special driver's seats in the front with the integrated headrest. They present just as nicely from the rear as they do from the front. Everything here is very well finished and designed. The rear pocket looks just as stylish as the rest of the seat. Now, it might seem like an unimportant detail, but as this car has been very clearly designed for 4 full adults to sit in, you really want that quality to resonate through in the rear as well. Now, talking of that, here we have special seats in the back, and I'm delighted to see these. Why? Well, ordinarily, you often find in sporty cars that all of the design work and effort has gone into the front and the back seat passengers have been a little bit forgotten. So I'm really happy to feel how supportive these rear seats are. If the front driver is having a lot of fun, then you as the backseat driver get nicely held where you want to stay as well. So how much is all of this design going to cost you? Well, prices for the Coupe start from a little under 84,000 and they go all the way up to a little under 147. But wait, you're not done spending money there. There are a couple of optional extras you are definitely going to want to spring for. First of those is the air suspension. Add to that the dynamic cornering on the rear. Now that gives you an extra 3 degrees of active steering on the rear of the car. And in a car this size, that makes a very significant difference. Added to that, well, I've got to say I'm going to want to go with the custom color because, come on, you're not going to want to spend all of that money and then only have it look the same as everybody else's. So that's going to add around about 10,000 euro all in to that price. So that taken into account, really, this is not a cheap purchase, but I don't think it ever was intended to be. And if you have a look at the styling here, for me, this is everything that this car has to say. Sure, you don't have to go with the lighter weight pack that adds to the sport and dynamism. You don't have to go with the big engine. You can have your cake and eat it with the smaller engine and the cheaper car. But I have to tell you, for me, the big achievement in this car is not only how much of the styling and design DNA of a 911 has gone into this, and I really want to see that accentuated. So I really want to go with this contrasting matching to really make that design language pop. But I also want to get as much of that performance in there as possible. So although in general, I'm a huge fan of panoramic roofs, I think I'm going to go with the carbon here. It really looks fantastic and it makes you feel that you have something that's really very special indeed. This design language just really works if we accentuate the minimalism of the design and really bring out the sportiness. All of that said, clearly, a coupe is always going to be a slightly compromised design. What's very special about this car, to my way of thinking, is how much attention to detail has been put in delivering you as much of the comfort as you want that is actually achievable and possible. Nowhere can you see that better than that dropped rear seat that still gives you the headroom you want, and the contrast of this additional rear spoiler that not only works aesthetically, but really achieves the best in performance terms for this car. So, in pure design terms, for me, the Coupe is an outstanding success. Whether or not you think it justifies the price tag by the time you've finished adding all the bells and whistles that you want, well, that's another question. But for now, I think it really is a superb entrant into the Cayenne lineup, and I can't wait to see how it drives. Well, that's everything from us for today. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below, please subscribe, and we hope we'll see you again soon.